So the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that I'm wearing exactly the same things as I was wearing yesterday. That's because it's not the next day. I know I just filmed this one straight afterwards. So while I'm here, and while I've got the camera working, and while it's relatively quiet, I'm going to do the next one, where we're going to talk about climate change. So North Warwickshire Borough Council has a climate change board. This has not met very often. So I became a member of it as part of the North Warwickshire Independent Representatives group, representative on the Climate Change Working Party in May. And we had our first meeting of that group yesterday evening. And we had a very long presentation in terms of what is climate change and all of that. And some fairly stark figures in terms of the amount of carbon that's being generated and impacts. I'm not going to go into all of those. Is that you can go find that out for yourself. But it was a very interesting discussion where the council already has a target, and the target is to be net zero as a council by 2030, and as a borough to be net zero by 2050. And we were discussing around this, and I detailed that given the data, given the fact that there is so much generation taking place, and there are financial pressures as well, is that you want to get the most bang for your buck. Is the concentration on councils making themselves net zero the best way of using the council's resources in addressing what is a global problem? Now, I know that many people say, oh, it's a global problem, what can you do? China, blah, blah, blah. Don't care about China. Well, I do care about China, but what I mean by that is that others failure to act doesn't mean that we have no responsibility to do our part. I'm very much for meeting our responsibilities and holding others to account wherever you can. Now, and my feeling is that a disproportionate amount of money on council assets and buildings and fleet and whatever, I don't want it to be purely virtue signaling. We have a responsibility to those, but if we can achieve more by supporting residents to do more, then that, I think, should be our focus. And so I actually suggested that even though we would not achieve the targets, that we reverse the 2030, 2050 kind of aspect, so that we would look to get the borough to net zero by 2030 and the council by 2050, thereby just trying to move us away from being responsible for ourselves, but also the impacts that we can have delivering further. I haven't got a new subscriber, but there's a little dog here who's determined to sit and listen to everything I'm going to say. And he's desperately trying to move him on. But it's only a little. Anyway, but my feeling is that if our overall aim is to reduce the amount of carbon that's being generated, that we have a focus and a need to reduce that from whatever source. And if we have the ability to influence more greatly by doing that outside of our own estate, then we have a duty to do that. So it was very interesting in terms of the response of the more party political animals. They were detailing the potential costs of some of these items and the return on investment. My feeling on that is that by working to better environment, it's an investment in our future. And there is so much that could be done on locally that actually improves the living environment at the same time. Is that carbon offset? Fantastic, you know, is that there's some questions around how effective it is and so forth, but identifying areas within our region and our area of areas that we could turn back into more woodland, you know, for leisure and recreation purposes, to increase biodiversity on our estates, to make the place a healthier and more pleasant place to live and retain that, at the same time that there's going to be so many pressures on our land and resources elsewhere, you know, is that we are going to build more on housing. There is going to be more pressures on those kind of areas. There is going to be more pressure, and we still want to have a good standard of living. You know, this is not about, and again, you can just hear the anti-voices turning around and going, no, well, they're not giving up their jet travel and blah blah blah. It's not necessarily about that, but it's about what can we do so everything is achieved in the round, and moving and taking steps. The other aspect that turns around is that there's always the great elephant in the room in terms of local government reorganisation, and do we really want to do something when as an organisation we might not exist in a couple of years. My feeling on that is that we have a duty to do whatever we can while we're in post. To turn around and say that we're just going to stay into a state of inertia for the next 2-3 years on so many different issues just because we don't know what it's going to be like, then we're failing in our duty. We'll give up, we'll go home, shut the doors now, just keep going the way that we are and stop having any discussion, rather than pointless discussion for the sake of it. The greatest lack of resource that has ever occurs in any governmental organisation is political will. Is there will and desire to go and deliver on it? There was a question that was posed, a challenge posed by officers at the end, is that over all the list of options, are any of these politically not possible? Are any of them, do we take them off the table right here and right now? And my response to that, being an independent representative, was that there's nothing off the table. Nothing off the table whatsoever. And then pointed to everyone else on the table and went, your turn. And see what their response was. And it was a dodge, it was a duck. It was like, well, we need to see this, we need to see that, we need to see the other. And in actual fact is that it is a statement of fact and truth, is that when there isn't the political will to do something, there is a request for more and more information around it and for more and more reports, until actually you get a report that says something that slightly resembles what you wanted to say, and then you can go with that. Whereas if there's a political will to do something, they don't need the data, they'll just go and do it, and they'll find the money somehow. And while there isn't a desire necessarily to go and spend money on things that don't have an immediate impact or an immediate apparent benefit, then it's somehow not worth doing. And that's a failing of our political processes. I don't care about getting re-elected. I care about doing the right thing and doing the job that I'm elected to do here. And that's the kind of attitude that needs to be taken forward. You know, if there are difficult decisions to be made, you're paid to make the difficult decisions. But all too often the councillors are doing £50,000 jobs and we're doing them with £5,000 candidates. You know, but we'll see how that goes. The meetings are going to be more regular. The other aspect is that our meetings used to be, one of the reasons why our meetings didn't happen so often is because they were aligned to similar meetings at county council, so that we could have input, so we could align with their kind of aspects. There hasn't been a county council meeting this civic year, as far as I'm led to believe. The other district and borough councils are in the same position. They were waiting for the same. There was a suggestion that we were going to write to the county council to ask what their attitude was, whether there was going to be any meetings sort of like scheduled. And what I've suggested, which is being taken forward anyway, just to give that its due, is that we act in partnership with the other districts and borough councils to put the letter in together. So we aren't like the bad guys in the Bruce Lee movie, just going one at a time, that we go en masse to try and get the result that we want. So I'll keep you updated on that. Take care. Bye-bye.